You said you're a fan of Bernie Sanders. Would you classify yourself as a Bernie bro? What's the technical definition of a Bernie bro? Is that it's a subset? No. I'm sorry. You're a sophisticated philosopher, writer, economic and political thinker. Of course, you would not call yourself a Bernie bro.
I'm fine with calling myself a Bernie bro. That's because it was made up by liberal journalists to smear Bernie and his supporters.
Oh, that's hilarious.
During the 2016 campaign, even though disproportionately his supporters were like young women in their 20s, but whatever. I think I ride for Bernie. There's worse things in the world than being called a bro, so it's fine.
What do you like about Bernie Sanders, and to what degree does he represent ideas of socialism? To what degree does he represent the more traditional sort of liberal ideas?
I love Bernie. Most of all, I like his clarity. He's by far the best communicator we have on the left. He speaks with a moral force. He's relatable. And he has taken a lot of socialist rhetoric from academia and brought it down to its core in a way that's comprehensible for ordinary people and speaks to their daily lives. So when Bernie does a speech, people can finish his lines because they know what he's going to say. Mm-hmm. They know what points he's going to hit, because socialism, in my mind, should not be a complicated thing. Now, when we get to more abstract discussions about what a future system would look like, when we get to the policy trade-offs today, I think we need to put on a different hat. We should embrace all sorts of nuance and contradiction and complication. But when it comes to the core moral and ethical appeal, I think Bernie grasps that and how to communicate it. Now, Bernie Sanders was politicized a very long time ago. I actually once told him, I've only met him a few times, but one time I joked that in his book, he mentioned that one politicizing moment in his life was when the Brooklyn Dodgers left town, and he was devastated because he was a Dodgers fan, from Brooklyn. And I said, this is like 2020 campaign. This may be 2019. I said, Bernie, you're running for president. You do not need to keep reminding people of your age.
Yeah.
He was politicized through the Young People's Socialist League, which was an old offshoot of the Norm Thomas Socialist Party of America. So very old school socialist tradition. Then he was engaged in labor struggles in the 60s. He was engaged in the civil rights movement. So he came from this old left generation that I think just had a more plain-spoken, more rooted way of understanding change and socialism. Mm-hmm. It wasn't, in my mind, polluted by academia and by some of the turn towards issues of culture and excessive focus on representation or whatever else. It was really rooted in something economic in a way. Mm-hmm. Then obviously he had all his ideas, and he was also a product of the left in that he went to Vermont. He kind of did the back to the land thing. He was basically like not quite a hippie and affect, but he was out there trying to farm or whatever in, cold as hell northern Vermont. Mm-hmm. And then he decided to do politics, do electoral politics, and he failed for a long time. He did third-party politics. He kept losing races. Eventually, he became, by savvy and luck and things he learned, the mayor of Burlington, Vermont. And he just kept with the same message. And in my book, I talk about, I quote, I think, a Bernie speech from the 1970s, one of his early campaigns, and I compared it to a Bernie speech during his 2016 campaign. It was virtually identical. Millionaires was swapped with millionaires and billionaires. Speaking of billionaires, which is beautiful. It's I think there's something great to what he offered American politics, and also all around the world there's a socialist pole in politics, whether you agree with it or not. In all these countries in Europe and any rich country, Japan and so on. In the U.S., we really didn't have that. The furthest left you could go was like, Chris Hayes and MSNBC or whatever. I'm very glad that there's a socialist pole, and I think we have Bernie to thank for it. To the extent that a lot of self-described socialists don't think Bernie is a real socialist, it's in part because he stays grounded in people's day-to-day lives and struggles. I don't think he thinks often the way that I do, and other people more disconnected or step removed from day-to-day politics think about the future contours of a socialist society and so on. But I think he's morally committed to a egalitarian, different sort of future.
And I don't think at least I haven't heard him talk about sort of this big, broad history and future, so the Marxist ideology and so on. Not that he's afraid of it or something. It's just not how he thinks about it.
Yeah, I think he's a practical thinker, and also, yeah, he is running. Even if he should be afraid of it too, because he is he is a major politician running for president. I think what people want is they want the left wing of the possible. And or at least the segment of the party that was voting for him, the Democratic Party that was voting for him, they wanted something that was a step or two removed from what they had now and was visionary, but not so far removed that it seemed like a scary leap. And I think we lost a chance in 2016 to elect someone that I think would have beaten Trump, or at the very least would have, been close.
Do you think the Democrats screwed him over?
Yes, not in the way of deliberate or direct vote rigging, but they put their thumb in the scale for sure. I mean, there's it's not even conspiracy theory. There's all this stuff in the debates about Clinton, Clinton's people being fed questions and whatever else, and just the tone of the media. The media was extremely dismissive and hostile to him. I love that Bernie still does the Fox News town hall, because they're just him speaking to the people, and he's not afraid of going on, any sort of outlet and making his case. But I think a lot of the liberal media in particular always had it out for Bernie Sanders.
What was because that was really annoying. That was really annoying how dismissive they were. I've seen that in some other candidates, like they were dismissive towards Andrew Yang in that same way. So forget the ideology. Why are they so smug sometimes towards certain candidates? What is that? Because I think that's actually at the core, to a degree, if Democrats or any party fails, that it's that smugness. Because people see through that.
I think a lot of these people are friends, even if they don't know each other. They're friends because they went to the same schools. They know the same people. They have the same broad just ideology and worldview. So they had a sense of what the Democratic Party should be and who it should be running and who was going to win, and also what was serious and unserious. Yeah. So Bernie would say some things about the world that objectively to a lot of people seemed correct, or at least pretty close to correct. And a journalist would just look at him like he was from outer space. To some extent, this also happens to people on the right. People on the right often say things that I find repulsive or just wrong, but there's parts of the media that would describe their certain views as illegitimate or outside the boundaries of acceptable conversation. I think there should be a few things outside the boundary of acceptable conversation, hate speech and so on. But like there's this attempt to say their views are illegitimate, and therefore anyone who votes for them for any reason is illegitimate too. And that's one reason why I think it's fueled a lot of resentment, and it will ultimately end up fueling the extremes of American politics, that people feel like they're not being listened to.
Yeah, and some of it is also style of speaking and personality, where if you're not willing to sort of play kind of a game of civility, or there's like a proper way of speaking, if you're a Democrat, if you're not doing that kind of proper way of speaking, people dismiss you. I think in certain sense, whatever you feel about him, people dismiss Donald Trump for the same reason, where it's the style of speaking, the personality of the person, that he's not playing by the rules of polite society, of polite politician society and so on. And that's really, that troubles me, because it feels like solutions, the great leaders will not be polite they're not going to behave in the way they're supposed to behave. And I just wish the media was at least open-minded to that, which I guess gives me hope about the new media, which is like more distributed citizen media, right? That they're more open-minded to the revolutionary, to the outsiders, right? I actually I really like Bernie Sanders. I first heard him in conversation with Tom Hartman. He had these like weekly conversations, and just the authenticity from the guy. I didn't even know any context. I didn't even know, honestly, he was a democratic socialist or anything. The authenticity of the human being was really refreshing. And when he, I guess, decided to run for president, that was really strange. I was like, surely this person has no chance. Just like he seemed too authentic. He seemed too like he's not going to be effective at playing the game of politics. So it was very inspiring to me to see that you don't necessarily need to be good at playing the game of politics. You can actually have a chance of winning. Yeah, that was really inspiring to see.